I know you have a personal stake here, but this cannot be a vendetta. We're cops. There are rules.
You're a cop. I'm an undercover cop. The rules are different. And you're fucking concerned about me?
You are an officer of the law, Wei, same as me.
We are not the same.
At this point in the story of Sleeping Dogs, undercover officer Wei Shen has already made contact with his childhood friend Jackie Ma. Jackie then introduces him to Winston Chu, the leader of the Water Street Gang, which has become Wei's point of access into the much larger triad organization known as the Sun On Yee. All of this is taking place right in the heart of Hong Kong. The problem is this early conversation between Wei Shen and his handler, Raymond Mook, shows us things aren't as simple as just going undercover. Wei isn't just another cop on some random assignment. He's got a personal stake in all of this, and if we look at his past, especially his time working undercover for the San Francisco Police Department back in the United States, we can see why Raymond's worried. Wei has a history of getting too deep into his cover. Spending long stretches of time pretending to be someone else can wear down even the toughest officers. It blurs the line between who you are and who you're trying to make others believe you are. But for Wei, it's a little more personal than even that. The people he's dealing with now, the world he's back in, it all ties back to his own childhood. Pain, trauma, and the original story as to why he even left Hong Kong. Why he even became a police officer to begin with, completely abandoning his original idea for a career. There's a long, complicated emotional history pulling at him, and if there's one thing we already know about Wei Shen, it's that he's willing to cross the line when he thinks it's necessary. Justice, loyalty, morality, he'll bend any of it if it means getting the job done, even if that means breaking the very oath he swore as a police officer, and Raymond knows that. He knows exactly what Wei's capable of. That's exactly what makes all of this so dangerous. But to really understand the full picture here, we gotta take a step back. About 18 years to be exact. Back to when Wei was just 10 years old. His mother, desperate to give her children a chance at a better life, packed them up and moved the family across the world to a completely different country. It's just unfortunate it was a case of too little, too late.
So you mentioned your sister back there.
Amy? Yeah, she OD'd years ago now. I mean, after we moved to the States, she tried to kick that shit, but...
That sucks. She was, really alive.
My mother thought maybe a new city, new country, but the hooks weren't deep.
And once you start on that shit, it's hard to stop.
Wei Shen grew up in Old Prosperity, a neighborhood in Hong Kong that was practically known for producing future members of the Sun On Yee triad. It was the kind of place where you'd recognize names that later became deeply tied to the organization. Winston Chu, Sam Lin, better known by his street name Dog Eyes, and most personally to Wei, his childhood friend Jackie Ma. Old Prosperity would come to have a reputation, as it was a district known to be an extremely tough neighborhood, and hence became a recruiting ground for the triads. For a lot of young children here, the allure was hard to resist. It was the promise of respect, power, and belonging. Growing up without a father, Wei could have easily followed that same path, had it not been for one positive role model, his sensei Sifu Kwa. Master Kwa ran his dojo with a purpose. He wanted to give kids in the neighborhood something better to chase than street glory. Through martial arts, discipline, and moral lessons, he taught compassion, restraint, and thoughtfulness. His hope was that, at least for a few of them, his teachings would be enough to keep them away from the life of crime. For Wei, many of those lessons and early teachings would come to stick. And so Sifu Kwa became more than just a teacher. He was the closest thing Wei ever had to a genuine father, a steady guiding hand in what was otherwise a rough and uncertain childhood. But not everyone in Wei's family found that kind of guidance. His older sister Mimi started down a completely different path. She stayed away from the dojo and instead spent her time with kids from Old Prosperity, most notably Dog Eyes. The friendship between the two of them, if we can even call it that, turned bad very fast, as Mimi got caught up in drugs, and before long she was hooked on heroin, with Dog Eyes said to be responsible for her introduction to the drug. To feed her addiction, she then turned to prostitution. Seen as extremely attractive, Mimi's looks had always drawn attention, and her connection to Dog Eyes was just something Wei could never escape from. And so when he found out how close the two of them had become, he lost it, and he reportedly stabbed Dog Eyes with a pencil in a fit of rage, as a means to keep him away from his sister. And so in a way, despite everything Sifu Kwa had taught him, Wei's loyalty to his family and his temper often took over, showing flashes of the very violence his master had tried to keep him away from, and would later surface time and time again. As for Wei's mother, watching her kids spiral further out of control, Margaret Shen made a painful choice. She packed up and left Hong Kong behind, taking both Wei and Mimi to the United States in search of a fresh start. When they left, Wei was only 10 years old, Mimi 20. When they arrived in San Francisco, hoping that somehow a new country might help her break free from the addiction Dog Eyes had dragged her into. Unfortunately, by that time, the addiction already had its hold on her. She tried to get help, but it was a battle she just never really escaped from. Wei, on the other hand, had his own challenges. Adjusting to life in a completely different country wasn't easy, though not in the way you might expect. Later, psychological evaluations on him suggested that Wei had already formed a strong sense of identity back in Hong Kong. He wasn't part of the triad-drawn crowd, but he also never fully fit into his new environment within the United States either. So while the adjustment technically went fine, it still left its mark. Despite everything, Wei still pushed forward though. He graduated high school in 2002 with honors and enrolled at San Francisco Bay University that same September, majoring in politics. He was bright, ambitious, and determined to make something of himself. But then in 2004, something changed. After 2 years of college, Wei decided to leave and pursue other career options. On June 1st, 2006, he officially applied to join the San Francisco Police Department. Now that date's important because it came after what seems like a long, uncertain stretch in his life. Maybe a year or more spent drifting, or more likely, focusing on helping his mother take care of his sister Mimi. Unfortunately, Mimi's own records tell an extremely dark story. On August 11, 2006, she tested positive for both HIV and hepatitis C. Reports at the time noted that she struggled to stay on her antiviral regimen because of her unstable lifestyle. That led her back to heroin, and soon after, to prostitution to feed her addiction. The addiction was already in its advanced stages at the time of these reports, which also shares that she had attempted suicide before, and had been assaulted more times than she can bother to count. Her physical and mental health were deteriorating fast, and even with Wei and his mother trying to help, it was clear she needed immediate, intensive support just to survive. With the best estimates claiming that she wouldn't last another year without firm interference by family members. Sadly, history would come to repeat itself. Mimi fell back into the same destructive cycle that had haunted her back in Hong Kong. The drugs, the streets, and the dangerous people tied to American triad gangs all managed to find their way back to her. And not long after, she died from an accidental overdose on heroin. As if that tragedy wasn't devastating enough, it didn't stop there for Wei. Soon after, Wei's mother, Margaret, unable to bear the loss of her daughter, took her own life. And in the blink of an eye, Wei was completely alone. Of course, with Mimi, there was some overlap here. As she was relapsing, falling back into drugs, and getting tied up in the American-ran triads, during the same period, Wei was in his second year as an SFPD officer, young, sharp, and already grabbing the attention of his superiors. From the start, Wei wasn't just another academy graduate. He showed a rare combination of intelligence, physical skill, and instinct. It was a particular kind of intuition that you just couldn't teach someone. But what really caught his superior's eyes was how effortlessly he understood the language, structure, and mindset of the triads operating within San Francisco. Most officers treated the Chinatown gangs like an alien culture, something they only studied from the outside, and it took them quite a bit of work to even get that initial trust. Wei was different. He immediately belonged to that world just enough to read the structure and the people involved. Having grown up in Old Prosperity back in Hong Kong, he immediately recognized the old world hierarchies, the coded respect, the slang. The first-hand familiarity made him uniquely convincing when dealing with informants who would otherwise never open up to law enforcement. And so from the start, to them, he wasn't just a cop pretending to understand them, he genuinely spoke their language both literally and culturally. It was that cultural fluency paired with his willingness to take risks that earned him a top spot on the SFPD's plainclothes anti-Tong task force, his first step into undercover work. The assignment specialized in dismantling Asian American organized crime groups, particularly emerging triad cells running drug and protection rackets across the Bay. It was dangerous, unglamorous, and demanded absolute commitment, but for Wei it was perfect. It gave him purpose at a time when his personal life was rapidly falling apart. Because of his role, Wei gained access to confidential intelligence files. Those files included internal narcotics logs, homicide reports, and access to the growing network the triad-linked suspects the SFPD was tracking all across San Francisco. So when Mimi's name began surfacing in some of those documents, first in drug-related arrests, then as an addict connected to known distributors, he began to learn details about his sister and these gangs that made it even more personal for him. Considering the absolute dire state that his sister was actively being reported on, As a police officer, reading it in cold bureaucratic details or hearing secondhand or even witnessing the deteriorating state his sister was actively slipping deeper and deeper into, no matter how you cut it, it began to take a very strong and understandable toll on him. Page after page, he read on her decline, arrest records, witness statements, hospital reports. His sister wasn't just lost, she became a data point in the same criminal ecosystem he was sworn to dismantle. The same criminal system that he had to actively pretend that he was a part of. And buried within those files was the name that would come to define the next stage of Wei's story, Ming Tren. Ming Tren was a mid-level trafficker operating on the fringes of Chinatown, responsible for pushing the same high-purity heroin that had reached Mimi. Tren wasn't some faceless drug lord, he was precisely the type of predator Wei had spent most of his time undercover studying and chasing. And now with his sister dragged into all of it, it wasn't professional anymore. After that, people around him started noticing changes. Colleagues mentioned how Wei's reports began to show emotion, language that bordered on obsession whenever drugs or trafficking appeared in the casework. His mentors chalked it up to stress, but the department psychologist had warned of this possibility years prior, documenting what she called the chameleon condition, because Wei had spent most of his life adapting culturally, socially, psychologically, dating all the way back from his time originally in Hong Kong, then San Francisco, and now his undercover work as an SFPD officer. He was unusually good at blending into whatever identity he needed to survive, but that same strength carried a hidden danger. Within her psychological evaluation on Wei, she mentioned that if the chameleon stays in a given environment for too long, it might forget its original color. In other words, tying back to Wei's upbringing of not having a father, creating this sense of identity all the way back to Hong Kong, but having to adapt in a social environment and now a professional one would make it hard for him to identify what is personal and what is professional, and thus potentially severely limiting his ability to identify his own actions as a police officer and the actions he's allowed to pretend to engage in simply to get the people around him to believe the fact that he is one of them. And it's a warning that proved eerily prophetic. Between 2008 and 2010, the Anti-Tong assignment deepened into full-scale undercover work as part of the Asian Organized Crime Unit. Wei embedded himself within low-level triad circles, tracking smuggling operations and drug movement between the Bay and Vancouver. His ability to act a part earned him credibility fast within these organizations he was infiltrating, and while that was great on one hand, on the other hand, those aware of the dangers of working undercover for long stretches of time, and in Wei's particular case, serving as this metaphorical chameleon, it became a real concern for his superiors. And this all coincided while Mimi's life was unraveling in the background, reported through the same updates sitting in Wei's own case folders. Then came 2010, the year where everything just fell apart. Ming Tren turned up dead. His body was discovered half submerged in the bay between Alcatraz and Fort Point. The coroner's report discussed the brutal details of the state Ming's body was discovered in. Multiple fractures, burns, and a single close-range gunshot to the head. Investigators found evidence of torture almost immediately. A confidential informant came forward and said Wei Shen was responsible for Ming's death. This was despite officially Shen being cleared. Lieutenant Frank James, Wei Shen's handler at the time, claimed they'd been together the same night Ming Tren was killed. But the alibi had no proper trail, no timestamp logs, no surveillance records. Frank had no official evidence to confirm his statements. So when IA pressed him for a polygraph test, he refused, evoking the internal consensus that his silence was clear. Someone knew more than they were actually saying. The file stayed open, red flagged and quietly marked as sensitive, but despite there being no official arrest, Wei still wasn't able to avoid the fallout. If anything, he was pushed more towards a breaking point. His revised psychological evaluation later that year described prolonged stress, psychological dislocation, and exhaustion. Regardless of these findings, Wei Shen was still cleared fit for duty. That decision came despite the growing cloud of suspicion surrounding him. And not just him. Other officers within the San Francisco Police Department had begun to fall under scrutiny as well, as investigations started to believe that more than one person may have been involved in the murders of various triad members across San Francisco. But for Wei, it was already over. The reason he had come to the United States in the first place was gone. His sister was dead and his mother was too. And while his career as an undercover officer was still considered highly valuable, it was now under serious strain. Many strongly believed that Wei had killed Ming Tren in retaliation for his sister's overdose, a personal act of revenge rather than justice. With that suspicion hanging over him, there was little left tying him to San Francisco. At that point, there seemed to be only one place left to go: home, back to Hong Kong. Exactly how that transfer came to happen is a bit unclear. Both Hong Kong police records and Shen's own accounts leave gaps. It's uncertain whether Superintendent Thomas Pendrew identified Wei as a valuable asset and personally requested the transfer, or if Wei himself quietly put in the request. Either way, his return to Hong Kong carried its own layer of mystery. What is known is that within SFPD files, investigators explicitly recommended that Shen's recent notoriety not be shared with Hong Kong's police leadership. His suspected connections to triad killings, at the very least the growing belief that he was involved, were effectively withheld, leaving Hong Kong authorities in the dark. Raymond Mok, however, wasn't so easily kept in that darkness. He went about conducting his own investigation into Wei Shen. Mok quickly recognized his capabilities and effectiveness as an undercover officer, but that same skill set raised a concern. In Mok's eyes, Wei wasn't just capable, he was extremely dangerous. Too dangerous to be brought into Hong Kong's situation without extreme caution. He raised these concerns to his supervisor, Thomas Pendrew, and even made Wei's entire past clear to Pendrew. From his actions tied back to San Francisco, to Wei having grown up surrounded by high-ranking triad members in Hong Kong before ever leaving the United States. To him, he even believed Wei carried those connections with him to the United States. From his entire perspective, Wei's loyalty to law enforcement was a giant question mark, and it wasn't worth the risk. To Raymond, it was simply wiser to look elsewhere, to find other officers better suited for the job of infiltrating the triads, particularly the Sun On Yee. The Hong Kong Police Department had tried before, albeit with limited success. One of those attempts came in the form of an undercover officer named Charles Ho, who had been embedded within the Water Street Gang. The group was run by Winston Chu, a red pole within the Sun On Yee triad. In simple terms, Water Street wasn't a top-tier faction and operated as a smaller crew within the broader Sun On Yee hierarchy. Winston Chu, as a red pole, commanded that localized group, controlling his own territory while answering to higher-ranking figures within the organization. Charles Ho reported directly to Raymond Mok, and during his operation he relayed steady progress, sharing that since his introduction to the gang in January of 2010, Ho had managed to climb into a higher advisory position within Water Street. While it looked promising, the reality of the situation was far less progressive. Ho repeatedly reported that other members have increasingly grown suspicious of him, and that they were beginning to question whether he was an undercover police officer or not. Worse still, he'd hit a wall. Water Street by its nature was too localized. It didn't offer a path forward into the higher ranks of the Sun On Yee. To move further, Ho believed he needed to step outside his assigned faction and work with other triad groups on the side to gain access to the higher echelons. Without that, his operation ultimately had no future. Now, these are the same conclusions Wei Shen would later echo in his own reports, highlighting a broader issue within HKPD, Mok, Pendrew, and the department as a whole consistently failing to fully listen to their operatives on the ground, even when those warnings were clear. For Charles Ho, that failure proved fatal. Mok chose to not pull him out, and further yet, nobody acted on the warnings that Ho was under suspicion of being a police officer. Unfortunately, his body was later discovered on an island off the east coast of Hong Kong. His body showed clear signs of systemic torture. There were burn patches across his skin, 5 of his fingers had been broken, his left eye had been removed, non-surgically, and across his body were 27 cuts varying in both length and depth. Yet despite all of that, he was still alive when he was placed inside a wooden coffin and buried 6 feet beneath the sand, where police officer Charles Ho unfortunately ultimately died by asphyxiation. The death of Ho effectively brought Pendrew's efforts to infiltrate the Sun On Yee to a standstill. The operation wasn't just stalled, it was collapsing in on itself, and if anything, the triads had become even more on alert now, more cautious of any attempt by law enforcement to get inside. Within that environment, breaking through would be harder than ever. So when Wei Shen entered the picture, the decision around him became far more complicated. Mok made his position clear. He sent repeated objections, laying out the risks of bringing Shen into Hong Kong Police Department, but Pendrew saw it differently. Because after Ho's failure, after months of getting nowhere, the need for a breakthrough had only grown stronger. The Sun On Yee remained untouchable and conventional approaches had proven ineffective. And so, Shen's red flags for Pendrew were opportunities. His history, his connections, even the doubts surrounding his methods weren't anything else but besides things that made him useful. And so, his transfer was approved, and Shen was accepted into HKPD, albeit only Mok and Pendrew would be aware of who he really was and the fact that he was a real police officer, as they needed absolute certainty that no one knew any of the circumstances surrounding Shen's return. If the attempt to infiltrate the Sun On Yee would be successful.
It seems that the evidence against you has failed to appear. How do you explain that? You must be a very dangerous man, Wei Shen.
Upon arriving in Hong Kong, Wei is immediately tasked with re-establishing contact with a childhood friend, Jackie Ma. Secrecy is critical. At this point, it's already suspected that parts of the HKPD may be compromised, so Wei's identity as an undercover officer has to remain completely hidden, not just for this operation, but for the entirety of his time in Hong Kong. And so the goal is simple. Before anyone even realizes Wei's back, there needs to be a believable identity in place, one that firmly distances him from law enforcement. And the way they achieve that is through a simple setup. A drug deal is arranged. Wei partners with another trafficker, agreeing to meet at a specific time and place that's already under HKPD surveillance. The situation thus is carefully orchestrated so that the police move in and arrest everyone involved, including Wei. It's all designed to land him within a holding cell with Jackie. Jackie at the time is frequently seen in close association with Winston Chu, the leader of the Water Street gang that undercover officer Charles Ho got so close to but ultimately ended up getting killed due to his discovery of being a police officer. Because Jackie has been seen multiple times through police surveillance around Winston Chu, that's proximity, both Pendry and Raymond see him as Wei's best entry point into the organization. The plan relies heavily on their shared history, on the assumption that Jackie's guard will drop once he recognizes Wei, allowing that trust to open up a path forward towards Winston. This, however, comes with its own risks. HKPD records already indicate that Jackie isn't actually a member of the Water Street gang. He runs errands for them, stays close to their operations, but hasn't earned their full trust. He exists on the fringes of their organization, useful but not fully accepted. Under normal circumstances, that would make him a weak link within this plan, but in this case, it ultimately doesn't matter, because the moment Jackie sees Wei, any doubt completely disappears. Their shared past takes over. Growing up, Wei was one of the few people who treated Jackie with genuine kindness, and despite all that time flying by, that kindness was never lost on Jackie, as he's extremely happy to see Wei.
Okay. Wei? Wei Shen? It's Jackie from Old Prosperity, man.
Oh shit, Jackie Ma.
Lanaya, it is you. I can't fucking believe it. What are you doing here? When did you get back? Well, Wei, man, you look like shit.
Hey, fuck you.
He brings Wei up to speed on everything, Winston becoming a Red Pole, Dog Eyes as well, and that recently there's been a falling out between the two of them. The exchange between the two of them end in a very positive note, with Wei appearing to ask for help, and Jackie happily telling him that once he's out of here, look him up. From the cell, Shen is then moved over into an interrogation room, handcuffed to a chair before Pendrew and Raymond are introduced. As Pendrew walks in and addresses how dangerous of a man Wei Shen is due to all the evidence tied to him suddenly disappearing, Raymond moves to disconnect the camera within the room before moving to free Shen. This is where everything within Sleeping Dogs is set up. From Shen's successful contact with Jackie, acknowledging he knows people within the Sun On Yee, Pendrew sharing his past convictions make him perfect, and most interesting of all, Raymond repeating what his files have already said, and what we will see throughout the game. That Raymond is more concerned with Shen's mental state and whether if he can treat this as a professional matter, or if he continues to repeat the same pattern he did back in San Francisco, acting out of line and blaming the triads for what happened to his sister, turning this all into a personal vendetta. And to his credit, it does appear to start out that way. Jackie would go on to bring Wei directly to Winston as soon as Shen walks out of the police precinct. But due to Jackie not being a proper member within the Water Street gang and no one remembering Shen as it's been 18 years since coming home, Winston and his second-in-command, Conroy, become extremely suspicious. They don't believe Wei or Jackie's explanation of him being from Old Prosperity, and Jackie gets a little bit of flack for immediately bringing outsiders to them. That's until Shen's sister is suddenly remembered by Winston.
We can't keep track of your bullshit friends, Jackie. No outsider.
He's not an outsider. He's from Old Prosperity. Like us. Hochi all day. Wei's old school, you know? I grew up with the guy.
Old Prosperity, huh? 點解我唔記得你嘅？
I've been on vacation. Jackie said you were looking for people.
Oh, Jackie 話嘅。
No.
I don't like this cocky little fucker. Wait a minute. 等一陣 I do remember you. You had a sister, right? 係咪啊？
Yeah, Mimi.
Mimi Shen. I remember her. hung out with dog eyes. No offense. 真係熟到爆㗎. Where's she now?
She's dead.
Sorry. 唔好意思啊.
At this point, Mimi's been dead for around 2 years, but even now, the weight of that loss is still clearly there. Shen, holding back what's obviously a mixture of grief and anger, has to look away for a moment just to compose himself, before finally saying that his sister is dead. What makes this moment more layered is that Winston likely already knew the causes. Mimi had been spending time with Dog Eyes years prior, and given how connected everyone is within the circle from Dog Eyes, Winston, Jackie, and Shen, it's hard to imagine her situation went unnoticed. The path she ended up on was probably something they were all at least aware of, but whether if it was known or not doesn't matter for long because the focus quickly shifts to something more immediate. As Jackie explains, Winston and Dog Eyes, who were once close, have recently had a falling out. On their way to meet Winston, Jackie and Shen were attacked by Dog Eyes' men. Wei ends up taking on all 10 of them by himself, dealing with the entire group single-handedly. And that immediately gets Winston's attention. He's been trying to build up his muscle for a while now, preparing for the growing tension with Dog Eyes, who has been steadily encroaching on his territory. What's happening here is essentially a quiet civil war. Both Winston's Water Street Gang and Dog Eyes' Jade Gang are part of the Sun On Yee, but that hasn't stopped them from clashing over control. Wei's performance thus makes an impression, and Winston wastes no time putting him to use. He would go on to send Conroy to take Wei along and help retake the market, an area of Winston's territory that's been slowly slipping away. Dog Eyes' crew has been running a heavy extortion racket there, pressuring vendors into switching loyalty. At first, this seems like a solid sign of trust, but it quickly turns into something else. Conroy, still suspicious of Wei, walks him straight into a hazing setup with other Water Street members. Shen is then forced into a fight against Conroy and others, holding his own until Winston suddenly steps in and shuts it all down. Conroy brushes it off, claiming they were just leaving, right as Dog Eyes shows up.
And it was just getting interesting, too. Winston, my old friend. So good to see you. How's your family, huh?
What do you want, Dog Eyes?
Oh, Winston, wait. Brother, I just came to talk to you, man. For old time's sake. Hey, who's the new blood?
It's Wei. You remember Mimi Shen? Back when you first started getting girls with Big Smiley?
Oh, Mimi. Oh, yeah. First girl ever sucked my cock. Yeah, so what?
Wei's her brother.
And I was the first guy who ever stabbed you. You remember me now?
Whoa, Wei, what the fuck, man? Seriously, Wei? I apologize. I'm really sorry your sister blew me.
The night market is mine, Dog Eyes. You got Siwa in the warehouse. That was the deal. So stay the fuck out.
Hey, tell your sister to give me a call, huh? I wouldn't mind giving her a mouthful.
After 18 years, Shen finally comes face to face with the person who created the initial heroin addiction his sister developed all that time ago. While his hatred for Dog Eyes is evident, Shen's continuation of his undercover work, all things considered, is still highly professional. Despite Dog Eyes crossing the line by completely disrespecting his sister, he ventures into the market with Jackie, who now has the opportunity to open up and talk more with Wei as the pair begin to slowly take back the market from Dog Eyes' influence. Apart from the initial contacts and progress made with learning the dispute between these two former friends, there isn't much more to report on here. Conroy comes back reminding Wei he has his eyes on him, to which Wei responds by standing up to him. As someone experienced with triads and having absolutely zero time for any of these games, his move to question and stand up to Conroy here shows perfectly, as his psychological evaluator stated. He's a chameleon. He wasted no time slipping into his undercover work that undoubtedly became much simpler thanks to his genuine friendship with Jackie that immediately started back up, and his natural hatred for Dog Eyes, a natural hatred that would cause the first hiccup within his undercover work. Following his and Jackie's success at expelling Dog Eyes' influence from the night market, Winston's next request is to deal with another one of Dog Eyes' successful advances. A ketamine dealer by the name of Ming originally relied on protection from Winston and the Water Street Gang, and in exchange, Winston received some kickback from Ming's earnings. Recently, Winston sent Jackie to collect the latest rounds of payment, to which Ming told Jackie to fuck off and told Winston he's now loyal to Dog Eyes. Enraged, Winston would send Wei to catch up with Ming, teach him a lesson, and force him to return to Winston's side. Wei, without a moment's hesitation, would find Ming within the night market. A foot chase would ensue, with Ming finally cornered by Wei on a rooftop, but he wasn't alone. Ming, armed with a knife and a handful of his own men, attempted to attack Wei. Unfortunately for them, Wei would get the best out of all of them, disarm Ming and savagely beat him until HKPD showed up unexpectedly, arresting him and letting Ming walk. Wei would find himself in the interrogation room, confronted by Inspector Jane Tang. Tang would quickly reveal she's done her homework on Shen. Remember, according to HKPD records, Shen is connected to the triads, and not only that, Tang followed his connections and ties to the triads all the way back in San Francisco. And so thinking about it that way, it does make sense that they would let Ming go and arrest Shen, as he's considered a much bigger catch. And also, if we go back to the beginning cutscene of Sleeping Dogs, the police officers are aware of who Wei Shen is, as within the subtitles they mention finally capturing this Wei Shen, pointing out just how effective the secrecy and overall background that they developed for Wei has been. Unaware he's an officer, she would attempt to cut a deal with him, get him to turn and share anything he knows on the Sun On Yee. Of course, Shen doesn't buy any of it, only cracking jokes about how he shouldn't have dropped out of art school, and thanks to Tang's kind words, he's finally found the light. There's a little bit more back and forth between the two of them until Pendrew shows up, initially ordering Tang to let this man go. She refused, pointing out that he is, yet again, a very dangerous triad member of the Sun On Yee. After some back and forth, Pendrew, frustrated by the resistance he's receiving from Tang, shouts that Shen is an officer, and she needs to let him go.
Inspector, there's been a misunderstanding.
Misunderstanding, sir.
As your superior officer, I'm instructing you to release this man.
But sir, I have it on record that he's Sun On Yee.
I understand that.
I can't simply just cut him loose. I mean, you're asking me to release a criminal with known connections to the Triad, and not only is it against
for God's
protocol,
sake, Tang, he's one of us.
What?
Jesus, Pendrew, let me get the door. There are a few badges outside who didn't hear you.
It's all right, Wei. We can trust her.
Trust her? I just met her.
Congratulations, Tang, so now you know. Maybe now we can make sure that we're helping Wei, not making his job harder than it already is,
Yeah, it doesn't seem like I have much of a choice.
No, you don't. Now see yourself out.
Permission to speak freely.
Denied. You need to be more careful, Wei. Much more careful. I can't bail you out like this again.
Sir,
I don't want to hear it. Just be careful.
Wei reaches his own point of frustration, sarcastically commenting how a few badges outside the door didn't hear him clearly enough. The point I think was lost on Shen though. If you pay attention to Pendrew's warnings and overall irritation, Wei's arrest should not have happened, and he needs to be more careful, especially because of the sensitivity surrounding them. And Tang being let in on their little secret was a mistake, something Pendrew didn't seem to want to happen. However, from this point forward, Tang being aware that Shen is in fact an officer, the two of them begin to work together on cases throughout the game. And this comes from Shen extending his own olive branch, apologizing to Tang and basically saying that he was just playing the part within the interrogation room. This openness and willing to work with Tang takes her back as she's frustrated with her own inability to see real success in taking down the Sun On Yee members and having issues with people that work for Pendrew being just like him, not willing to work with Tang or be in a cooperative mental state. I'm not sure if it really makes sense to cover all the cases that these two work on throughout the game. There's 4 in total. While technically separate from the main story, you do need to do them in order to progress the story, and I think they do, at least when the credits begin to roll, aren't exactly separate from Wei's own character progression. But the 4 main cases are centered around a Sun On Yee ketamine dealer, investigating murders tied to the underground racing scene, investigating a serial killer, and lastly the investigation of kidnapping a K-bar hostess. All of the cases are tied to the Sun On Yee in some way, shape, or form, having a very close overlap of Shen's presence and direct work with the Sun On Yee, beginning with the first case taking down a Sun On Yee drug dealer. This case leads Wei to uncover Ming's supplier, track him down, and build the case strong enough to result in multiple arrests. 2 of these arrests are especially important. The first one is a man named Feng Shen. Feng is one of the main suppliers for a dealer known as Popstar. Wei is able to bring him in by hacking nearby security footage and tipping off the police during a drug deal, leading directly to Feng's arrest. At first glance, Feng Shen doesn't seem particularly important beyond his role in the operation, but his name reveals quite a bit, as he's actually Wei's cousin. Yet despite that familial bond, Wei doesn't hesitate. There's no second thought, no internal conflict shown when it comes to turning in family if they're involved within the drug trade. The second key arrest is Popstar himself. Unlike Feng, Popstar directly supplied Ming, making him far more central to the case. Wei gathers enough evidence for Tang to charge him with conspiracy, trafficking, possession, and even murder, after Wei captures him in the act of killing his new supplier. This operation deals a major blow to the Sun On Yee, but it also creates a serious complication for Wei's undercover position. The rapid arrests of Popstar and Feng Shen don't go unnoticed. Water Street immediately starts to grow suspicious of Wei. From their perspective, the timing is just way too convenient. And all of this unfolds alongside the ongoing conflict between Winston and Dog Eyes. Their feud continues to escalate, with one of the most significant developments being Winston's crew taking control of a highly lucrative bus route that originally belonged to Dog Eyes. But the infighting doesn't stop there. As tension rises, Conroy uses the bus route takeover as an opportunity to test Wei. He openly implies that Wei might be a cop and pushes him to prove otherwise. According to Conroy, the only way to eliminate suspicion is simple: shed blood, kill someone. That's how they exposed the last undercover officer. The man Conroy is referring to is Officer Charles Ho. Apparently, Ho refused to kill, and it was that refusal that ultimately gave him away. Despite that pressure, Wei never actually kills anyone during this takeover. Even so, the operation is a massive success, and for the moment it seems to quiet some of the suspicion around him, but not entirely. Within these early reports to Raymond, Wei makes it clear that while he's gaining Winston's trust, others, especially Conroy, remain wary. They exclude him from conversations, keep their distance, and continue to question his loyalty. Wei even raises the possibility that extraction may be necessary if his cover is ever blown. And what's striking is how closely this mirrors Officer Ho's situation. Wei's reports echo the same warning signs, the same growing danger, and the same desperate need to consider alternatives in the events where they lose contact. But again, Raymond doesn't act. And just like Ho, Wei could have easily been killed had it not been for his quick thinking.
Wei, we've been waiting for you. You guys smell something? I do. 一直食屎嘅老鼠. You know what happens to rats, Wei?
Yeah, I heard. Yeah, Conroy gave me all the details when he was helping me out on that midway.
你收聲啊! Who the fuck do you think you are, huh? You come in out of nowhere and suddenly our guys start to get arrested? He ratted out Popstar, Winston. I know he did!
What are you gonna do to him? This motherfucker right here's a snitch! Is that right, Ming?
You fucking rat! I sent you to Popstar, but now he's in jail!
Yeah? And who stands to gain the most from that? You're gonna take over Popstar's whole ketamine racket now. No more scraps for you. You'll supply the whole city with drugs. You and Dog Eyes. Popstar's gone, but you're still dealing, aren't you? So who's supplying you? Are you guys actually listening to this asshole? He's a rat! He's a fucking rat!
You're still working for that bastard, aren't you, man?
Wait, Winston, I swear!
Always a dirty fucker,
Wei was correctly identified as a rat and the person behind Popstar's recent arrest. However, due to his quick thinking, Wei explained the only person to gain anything from Popstar's arrest is Ming. With Popstar gone, he becomes the top dealer, and not only that, Wei adds in Ming had already switched loyalty before, siding with Dog Eyes. Who's to say he hasn't been working with Winston's rival still? Because of this, Ming would be the one getting killed by Winston in front of Wei, followed by him thanking Shen and reminding him how important loyalty is. And if you succumb to greed and put your priorities and wants before everyone else, then you'll end up exactly like Ming. The killing of Ming is a quick reminder to Shen of just how dangerous all of this work really is. And needless to say, Ming's death does haunt him. That night he falls asleep, replaying the sounds of his accusation, Ming's death, and jumping out of bed in a cold sweat. And mind you, this is still extremely early within his investigation, yet it's already taking its toll on him. While he's made great strides in gaining the trust of Winston, much of his work has been around street-level brawls and honest police work. Then honest police work backfired, resulting in him having to twist words, redirect attention, and watch someone else get killed in front of him while having to continue on as if nothing happened. Wei realizes he needs to be much more careful. He has to protect his cover as a police officer while still pushing higher up within the Sun On Yee, working his way towards the ultimate prize, the Dragon Head, otherwise known as the chairman of the entire organization of the Sun On Yee. He handles the first part by getting his hands on a bug from a nearby electronics shop. He plants it inside the ventilation system of the Golden Koi restaurant, which served as the headquarters for the Water Street Gang. It's where Winston conducts many of his private conversations, making it the perfect place to gather more concrete evidence against Winston, Conroy, various other Water Street members, as well as being able to listen in on all these conversations that Wei was slowly being cut out of. At the same time, the ongoing conflict between the Water Street and Jade gangs doesn't seem to be leading anywhere. It feels like a giant stalemate, with both sides trading blows but gaining little ground. But that changes. As the feud between Dog Eyes and Winston continues to escalate, it unexpectedly creates an opening for Wei. And through this infighting, he's able to position himself right at the center of things, putting him in a position to not only meet the chairman directly, but also to fully earn the trust and respect of both Winston and Conroy. For the first time, any real suspicion of him being a cop starts to disappear, but that doesn't mean all danger disappears.
This guy wants in, he's gonna have to show me some blood on his hands.
You show your true colors tonight, brother.
You are an officer of the law.
By this point, Water Street's been on a run. They've retaken the night market, pulled Ming back from Dog Eyes, taken over the bus racket, and reclaimed Club Bam Bam, a nightclub that originally belonged to Winston, but like Ming, had switched sides until Wei stepped in and convinced the owner to come back. Dog Eyes responds the only way he knows how, by escalating even further. He orders a shooting at the Golden Koi restaurant, Winston's headquarters, but also where his mother works. In many ways, it really is actually his mom's place, and so by this attack, it was no longer just business, but very personal. While Winston's mother survives, 2 of his men are ultimately killed and several customers are injured. Enraging Winston, he decides to go after Dog Eyes in a big way. His original plan was simple: hit Dog Eyes' warehouse on the waterfront. It's the heart of his entire operation, where all of his drugs come through. He orders his men to burn it to the ground and kill the man running the operation, a man by the name of Siwa. On paper, it sounds like the perfect retaliation. In reality, it would have gotten Winston killed. Siwa may be working under Dog Eyes, but the situation is far more complicated than that. A large portion of the profits from that warehouse flows upwards to Big Smile Lee, another Red Pole in the Sun On Yee, and not just any Red Pole, arguably the most powerful and aggressive one. More importantly, a cut of that operation goes directly to the chairman. And so, Wei directly asks Winston what he thinks will happen when the chairman finds out his warehouse has been burned to the ground. Winston admits he wouldn't like it, but at the same time, he can't let Dog Eyes get away with an attack like this. So Wei offers a compromise. Burn the warehouse, but do not kill Siwa. Instead, bring him in, have him work for Winston, and give the chairman a bigger cut than Dog Eyes ever did. It's a much smarter move, one that avoids unnecessary fallout while still striking back at Dog Eyes. And as it turns out, it's a decision that will earn Wei favor with the chairman later on. But just as important is how Wei carries himself during this whole mission. Beginning with the way to the job, there's a quiet confidence in the way he accepts Winston's orders, a simple "yes, boss." Well, just 2 words. The way he owns up to it and just accepts it and walks out feels yet again as a completely intentional performance, as if he is fully accepting this position. Then there's Conroy. Still not fully convinced, Conroy keeps pushing. To him, there's only one real way to prove Wei is not a cop. He has to kill someone. Conroy treats this entire mission like a test, making it clear that before the night is over, Wei needs to have blood on his hands. To make things worse, he sets Wei up to fail. He jokes that they should have brought him a gun, forcing Wei to find one on his own once they're inside the warehouse. And he reminds him exactly what they're walking into. Dog Eyes' biggest moneymaker. They're not going to give up without a fight, so there will be blood. Interestingly, Wei doesn't push back. He almost casually reassesses the situation. He asks him, "So you want me to kill Dog Eyes' drug dealers to prove it? It'll be my pleasure." It's all extremely subtle, but in hindsight, this is without a doubt where much of Shen's story in regards to Dog Eyes and drug dealers becomes full circle. Despite there being no real emotion or outburst by Wei, his own words during the car ride there all make it really feel like this is his way of getting back. Drug dealers to him could easily feel like the scum of the earth that took everything from him, and now he's dealing with that scum tied directly to the man that practically killed his sister. If Feng Shen's arrest was anything to go by, Wei has little concern over what happens to these people, regardless of potential familial ties. In this, it does hit a moral gray area within his work, as he does proceed to enter the warehouse, guns blazing, catching up to Siwa, who refuses to give up so easily. Siwa would attempt to run, resulting in Wei having to simultaneously escape police, who responded quickly to the burning warehouse and chase down Siwa, apprehend him, and bring him back to the lockup for Winston. A major success, allowing Winston to restructure a partnership with Siwa. Thank Wei for the work he did, successfully bringing Siwa back, and most importantly, Conroy apologizing, acknowledging he was wrong about Wei all along, and today he showed his true colors. From here on, Wei has both Conroy and Winston's respect. Yet again though, the events of the day hit Wei hard as that night he goes home with the same nightmares as before, echoing the words of Conroy's demands for blood, his apologies, and finally, Raymond reminding him that he's an officer of the law.
His hands.
You show your true colors tonight, brother.
You are an officer of the law.
Ming's death was attributed to Wei with his life on the line and the threat of all his work being compromised. While more understandable, it doesn't make it any easier or make him faultless. However, the warehouse raid was different. He was directly killing other drug dealers, and involving himself more than ever within the civil war that was brewing in the Sun On Yee. But he couldn't stop now. Wei would be called to meet with Winston at Club Bam Bam, where he finds his leader on the phone with the chairman. Evidently, Winston's rattled, and by the time he hangs up with no other explanation, he gives the simple orders of everyone to stay put and don't do anything until they hear otherwise from him. He and Wei were called to meet with the chairman.
Wei, you're coming with me. Looks like you're gonna meet Uncle Po. The rest of you, wait here. Don't do anything until you hear from me.
What's going on?
You are staying here like I told you. And you are shutting the fuck up. Got it?
Yeah, boss. Of course.
Good. Let's go.
On the way to the chairman, Winston and Wei get closer. Winston vents to him about how they pissed off the wrong people now. They're going directly to the chairman's apartment to speak with him, but this wasn't what he wanted. According to Winston, Dog Eyes got greedy, and now because he stood up for his own territory and himself, he's the one that's going to pay for Dog Eyes' actions. He thanks Wei for his loyalty and shares that they're brothers now. Not in the sense of just being Sun On Yee, but actually real family. His other enforcers are good and loyal, but they aren't leaders. Not in the sense that Wei appears to be. His decision to keep Siwa alive was perhaps single-handedly the only thing that can keep them from being killed. But that's still a big if, and so Winston is expecting the worst. He tells Wei that if anything happens during the meeting with the chairman, don't do anything stupid. Let him take the punishment, and in the event that he's killed, he asks Wei to take over operations, look out for all of his men, and to take care of his wife-to-be Peggy and his mother. More than anything, this moment marks a real shift in Wei and Winston's relationship. From this point on, it genuinely feels like the two of them start to become family, just like Winston said they are. Looking at it from a more professional angle, Wei's first impression with the chairman is also surprisingly favorable. Uncle Po, as the chairman is known, thanks Wei for making sure his man Siwa wasn't arrested by the police. In return, he gives Wei the chance to work with one of his other associates, who happens to run a lucrative debt collection business. At the same time, Uncle Po quietly reminds Winston who really holds the power. He pressures him into saying he won't mind if Uncle Po quote-unquote borrows Wei, turning what sounds like a simple request into a clear show of control. This entire scene is built around Uncle Po's real influence. He presents himself as a kind, gentle old man, but beneath that calm exterior is someone who can make people disappear whenever he wants. At the same time, we also see Wei's loyalty to Winston. He makes it clear that Winston has been a good friend to him, that Winston gave him a chance, and that he's been trying his best to repay that favor by doing right by him. He even goes so far as to defend Winston's decision to attack the warehouse on his behalf, or at least make the case for why it made sense in the moment.
Winston says you're the one who made sure Siwa was not arrested.
No, it was Winston's idea. He had to assert himself, assert his position, but he didn't want to inconvenience you in the process.
Did he now?
In the end, Winston seems to get off pretty lightly for everything that's happened. Aside from what basically amounts to Uncle Po calling him up to his apartment and forcing him and Dog Eyes to cool things down and stop fighting, there doesn't really seem to be any serious punishment. More than anything, it comes across as a slap on the wrist. With that handled, the attention shifts to Winston's wedding preparations. His wedding to Peggy isn't far off, and from the standpoint of Wei's character development, I think it's definitely worth talking about the way he spends a day with Peggy, helping her get ready for the wedding. Even though it might seem like a mission that deviates from the whole story, it actually adds a lot to Wei's personal life and to the way he fits into this world. Peggy really does feel like a sister to him at this point. She talks about how, once everything is settled down, she's going to help find a girl for Wei. She talks about how her relationship with Winston and her mother-in-law has changed over time. At one point, she even tells a story about how she thought Winston's mother hated her and even scared her, until one day when Winston kept ignoring her because he was completely buried in his triad business, His mother finally lost her patience and yelled at him so loudly that everyone within the restaurant heard it. From that day on, Peggy says her relationship with her mother-in-law improved a lot. Really, his mother wants what's best for his son, and after that scolding, Winston has been a lot more attentive to his wife-to-be. During this mission, Wei takes Peggy to get fitted for her dress, and while they're there, she tells him she wants black orchids at the wedding. They mean a lot to her because they were her mother's favorite flower, and they also symbolize a bride and groom staying together forever. The problem is, black orchids aren't available anywhere within Hong Kong. The only ones they can find within the city aren't even for sale because they're being kept inside the grounds of a temple garden. And apparently the temple had already turned down a recent offer of $100,000 from a CEO who wanted them for his daughter. So there was no chance they were just going to hand them over. That doesn't stop Wei though. He goes out of his way and dresses up as a monk and steals some of the black orchids for Peggy, which ends up forcing him to fight off other monks during the escape. Honestly, one of the most interesting enemy factions I've ever seen in a video game. One other part of this mission that I think is worth pointing out though is the conversation Wei and Peggy have about why he originally left Hong Kong for the United States. Peggy teases him and asks if it was because he was a bad boy. But Wei explains that growing up in old prosperity, just like Winston, was hard. He makes it clear that it wasn't him who went down the wrong path, but his sister. And I think that conversation matters because it shows how careful Wei is in the way that he talks about it. He doesn't over-explain or get too specific, but the way he handles it keeps the conversation grounded and ends on a really positive note. It also gives you the impression that he's grown a lot and that there's at least some hope for a healthier kind of mourning when it comes to his sister's passing.
So your mother took you to the States?
Yeah, she loved Hong Kong, but she wanted to give me and my sister a change of scenery.
Oh, were you being a bad little boy?
No, it was Mimi, my sister. Growing up in old prosperity, she started down a particular road and couldn't get off of it. And my mother hoped that moving to San Francisco would shake her up. Change who she hung out with,
Did it?
Yeah, for a while. But some habits die hard, Some don't die at all.
I'm sorry, Wei. Winston mentioned that she passed away. I didn't mean to bring it up.
It's okay, Peggy. It's good to remember where you came from and where you're going.
It starts to feel less like Wei's simply being welcomed a little more by Peggy and Winston, and more like he's actually building a real connection with these people. They all grew up in old prosperity after all, which makes them the closest thing Wei really has to a family connection outside of his own blood relatives. On top of that, from everything we know, he hasn't really built any meaningful relationships with anyone else. He came back from the US, got to work right away, and now he's finally starting to get closer to the people around him. In one sense, that's great for his career, but in another, it's terrible for what's waiting just around the corner.
Wei, 我個老友, I'm so happy you can make it.
Congratulations. Peggy, you look stunning.
Thanks, Wei.
You both must be very happy.
Yes.
The best day of your life, so they say.
Winston's wedding day finally arrives, and he personally invites Wei and Uncle Po. Uncle Po seems genuinely happy to be there, enjoying the day alongside Winston and his future wife-to-be. While Uncle Po's talking with Peggy and Mrs. Chu, Winston pulls Wei aside to ask him for a personal favor. He tells him that he has the chairman's favorite wine in the trunk of his car, but in the excitement of the day, he never got the chance to bring it into the venue. By what almost feels like pure chance, Winston's request for Wei to go to the car and get the wine ends up saving the undercover officer's life. Because while Wei is on his way back, he suddenly hears screaming and rushes back to the church. Unable to get in through the main door because it's been barricaded, Wei has to find another way inside. He makes his way in through a window he reaches from the roof, and the moment he gets in, he's attacked by the catering staff. Once he deals with the small group that rushes him, he pushes into the next room and finds even more catering staff firing guns. At first, it isn't clear who they're shooting at, but after Wei kills them and moves to the far side of the room, he discovers what their target was: Winston, who's found holding Peggy in his arms.
Shit! Oh God, Peggy!
Wait. Get Peggy out of here. She doesn't deserve this.
Winston! Winston! Fuck! Oh, shit. Peggy.
Winston's final words are about Peggy. He tells Wei to get her out of here because she doesn't deserve any of this, but by then it's already too late. Peggy's dead. Winston at least was a Red Pole, a Sun On Yee member. Peggy, however, wasn't. She was mercilessly gunned down in a church on her wedding day, and she had nothing to do with any of this. But there's no time for Wei to stop and mourn. The rest of the building is still filled with gunfire and screams, and there's still the question of where Uncle Po is. So Wei keeps moving, killing more staff and men who appear to be part of the rival 18K triad, as they continue trying to reach the chairman and finish the job. Eventually, Wei finds Uncle Po injured. Without wasting any time, he picks him up and escorts him while fighting off rival men who keep trying their best to kill the chairman. In the end, Wei gets Uncle Po across the street to a hospital, where he drops him into a wheelchair, pulls a nurse aside, and tells her that she's personally responsible for his uncle now. If anything happens to him after this, it will be on her. Under the advice of Po, Wei leaves before the police inevitably arrive. Ironically, the next place he goes is straight back to the police. Later that night, he meets with Raymond, and by this point, it's already the third time they've spoken since the beginning of Wei's investigation. Truthfully, none of those meetings have gone particularly well. The first meeting was focused mostly on Wei's mental state, since that has clearly become Raymond's main concern. The second was centered on Raymond's desire to pull the plug on the operation altogether. He was worried about the police's involvement with the triads, especially the possibility of Wei's position within the Sun On Yee leaking out and becoming public knowledge. That concern only grew after Winston's raid on the drug warehouse became such a huge move that the entire city seemed to know about it, and naturally that rattled Raymond even more, reminding Wei that Pendrew takes risks, but he doesn't, and Wei's his concern. Still, Wei managed to ultimately convince him not to shut everything down because saving Siwa had given him an audience with the chairman, something Raymond could barely believe considering how low Wei's position was within the entire organization. He was still a foot soldier. Raymond ultimately chose to leave Wei in place while Wei told him to start actually reading the reports he was submitting, because maybe then none of this would become a surprise to him. That comment, if anything, only reinforces where Raymond's priorities really are. He seems far more focused on Wei's mental state and keeping him in line than on making sure he's safe for actually using the opportunity to justify the risk Wei's taking. It also points out that Wei's constantly in contact with Raymond and being open and honest about the majority of what he's doing. And I say majority because there's a good chance there was no report on the death of Ming or even the killings that Wei had committed himself during the warehouse raid. Now, after all of that, including the open shooting at the church, things have become even more complicated. First, there's the issue of these meetings themselves. Raymond had Wei waiting all day just to meet with him, which makes everything even more difficult to manage safely given Wei's rising position within the triads and the tension surrounding the organization. Then there's Wei's emotional state, because losing Winston as a Red Pole is one thing, but Peggy being killed on her wedding day is something else entirely. And instead of empathizing with Wei or reassuring him in some form to make sure that he can at least stay focused, Raymond does the same thing he's done before and doubles down. He tells Wei that he can't become personally attached because that's just how operations like this go. He admits it's hard for anyone who witnesses things like this, but his main priority is still keeping Wei in line. He shuts down Wei's warning that this is now war and reminds him that he's a cop, nothing more. His job is to enforce the law and that's it. Better yet, maybe it's time to pull him out altogether, as his original assignment was simply to get close to Winston, and now Winston is dead. But Wei has a better alternative.
I'll pull you out right now.
Pull me out?
Your job was to get close to Winston. Now that's not much of a strategy anymore.
Get close to? Open your eyes, Raymond. I am Winston now. With him gone, I'll be taking his place. You want the chairman? I report to him now. You want the Red Poles? I'm one of them.
That's what worries me, Wei. You're one of them.
You want to give up the best undercover HKPD has ever had? Your best shot taking down the Sun On Yee? Exactly. We done?
Yeah, we're done.
Despite pointing out how successful he's been in saving Uncle Po and essentially taking over Winston's operations, Raymond still doesn't see the opportunity in Wei's position. And to be fair, that's understandable. Even with Shen making all these gains and earning recognition from the Sun On Yee members who actually matter, he still isn't a Red Pole. And that means he still isn't really Winston in the way he claims he is. More importantly, he isn't yet Winston in the sense of truly being a triad leader. Raymond commenting about being afraid that Wei's exactly what he claims to be, that he is one of them, reinforces his suspicion of Wei and his fears about what he's becoming, but it actually ends up pointing towards something much bigger, something that Wei will prove over the next couple of days to be quite true. With Winston dead and Uncle Po in the hospital, the Sun On Yee falls deeper into civil war. Other Red Pulls start moving in, and every lieutenant begins making plays for power, hoping to put themselves in a much better position to become chairman if Uncle Po doesn't pull through. The most aggressive of these moves comes from Big Smile Lee, who just a few days after Winston's death sends one of his enforcers to intimidate Wei and the rest of the Water Street gang. According to this envoy, Lee's offer is simple enough. He'll let Water Street keep operating, but the percentage of their profits that used to go to Winston will now go up to Big Smile Lee. The other problem facing Wei is figuring out who was actually behind the killings of Winston and Peggy. He believes he was able to identify one of the gunmen that was there, and after an emotional visit with Mrs. Chu, the two of them come to an agreement. Wei would track the killer down, and instead of taking him into police custody or giving him to other members within the Sun On Yee for this blatant attack, the agreement between the two of them was he instead would bring the killer alive straight to Mrs. Chu. This is arguably one of the biggest moments where Wei starts to drift away from the police side of things. The gunman he thought he identified at the wedding turns out to be another Sun On Yee member, known as Johnny Ratface. Johnny had already crossed paths with Wei before, albeit only in passing, when he was leaving Uncle Po's apartment as Wei and Winston were getting ready to plead their case to the chairman during the rising war between Winston and Dog Eyes. In order to get in contact with Johnny, or more specifically to locate him, Wei ends up using police resources. He reaches out to Ricky Wong, who isn't actually a Sun On Yee member, but more of a close insider with strong connections to the organization. Ricky knows just about everything going on with the Sun On Yee, especially the ongoing conflict between Water Street and Jade Gang. And that's precisely why, when he gives Wei Johnny's phone number, he warns him that having any type of work with Johnny isn't a good idea. He's a lunatic that'll have you steam cleaning your conscience when you're done working with him. Wei says that's his man. He has some loose ends he needs tied up and needs to hire Johnny. From here, Shen gives Johnny a call, claiming he needs help taking care of someone. By building this backstory of working with movie stars and trading diamonds, Shen manages to have Johnny on the phone long enough to trace his location, where he then shows up, kills all of his men, and takes him prisoner, delivering him straight to Mrs. Chu. Johnny would be the first of two personal deliveries Wei makes to Winston's mother. Johnny was the gunman, and the first source of getting behind who was responsible for actually killing Winston and Peggy. In his follow-up visit to Mrs. Chu, she would share with Wei her methods of extracting information out of Johnny was quite successful. And as luck would have it, the death of this person would end up being much more personal to Wei and Mrs. Chu than initially expected.
Mrs. Chu?
你知冇啊 ？Sammy 佢細個嗰陣，佢每日都喺呢個廚房度食嘢，坐喺嗰度靜靜地食飯。而家佢會做出咁樣嘅嘢。
Sammy?
Dog Eyes.
Dog Eyes did it. Is that what Johnny told you?
Winston's own childhood friend, the same man who used to spend days sitting in Mrs. Chu's kitchen and quietly eating with her and her son, was the one responsible for the assailants dressing up as catering staff, with backup that looked like they were from the rival 18K triad. Dog Eyes is now Mrs. Chu's to deal with, and Wei's the one who personally delivers him to her. What's especially fascinating about Wei's takedown of Dog Eyes is just how in control he seems the entire time. Yes, there's rage there, and yes, there's obvious anger, but at no point does it really feel like his emotions are getting in the way of what he's doing or the way he's thinking. He even taunts Dog Eyes at one point, calling him by name, which makes the whole thing feel even more deliberate.
What the fuck you want, man?
You've done some bad things, Sammy.
What did you call me? Huh? Nobody call me that anymore. This is about me balling your fucking sister, isn't it? Huh? You gotta be fucking kidding me, man. Wake up, little brother. It's not like I put that needle in her arm.
That lack of emotional chaos is one of the things that makes Sleeping Dogs and Wei Shen's character writing so effective, because there doesn't feel like there's any huge dramatic flair behind it. It feels like a cold, calculated move, even if you know it's completely wrong for a police officer like him. It's what gives it so much moral weight, because it pushes the whole situation deeper into gray territory rather than making it feel like a simple revenge moment, almost as if it can be justified. But that gray area becomes even more intriguing when Dog Eyes tries to bargain his way out. During his apprehension, he claims that when it came to Wei's sister, he didn't actually put the needle in her arm. He says he was doing his job in collecting women for Big Smile Lee. Even though Wei makes it clear that this is personal and admits as much, Dog Eyes tries to frame it like business, something Wei shouldn't get hung up on. He even offers him a deal, saying that if Wei lets him go, Big Smile Lee will cut him in on whatever profitable side business he wants, maybe even everything. Taken by itself and separated from the way the story naturally unfolds within these videos, it does make you wonder whether that would have been the smarter move for Wei, from a police perspective. He wasn't a Red Pole, and Big Smile Lee was the strongest and most aggressive power within the organization. If Wei hadn't earlier pushed back and outright rejected Big Smile Lee's attempt to absorb Water Street under his influence and give him what was once Winston's cut, things might have gone very differently. That rejection ultimately led to a massive gunfight between Water Street and Big Smile Lee's men, and Wei eventually ends up forming an alliance with the Red Pole Broken Nose Jiang to create a unified front against Big Smile Lee. It can get pretty confusing, and we will definitely circle back to the broader conflict between Big Smile Lee, Broken Nose Jiang, and Wei's decision to reject Lee's takeover of Water Street. But looking at his handling of Dog Eyes, it really seems like he wasn't just focused on taking him out, but more so he harbored a deep-seated hatred for anything connected to Big Smile Lee, since Lee's business was built on drugs, prostitution, and pornography. Those personal feelings seem to drive Wei's actions, potentially causing him to reject a real, immediate path to the top of the Sun On Yee. If he had chosen to be more cooperative with Lee, he could have theoretically risen much faster. Even looking at the situation with Water Street and bypassing Dog Eyes, there was technically another option on the table. He could have killed Dog Eyes and then approached Lee, positioning himself as the person best suited to replace both Dog Eyes and Winston. Of course, that plan would potentially require him to bypass the rank of a Red Pole and pass that on directly to Big Smile Lee, as he's basically bending the knee to him, but more realistically, it possibly would have only worked if Uncle Po had died. Even so, it's a compelling what-if that highlights just how much Wei was willing to sacrifice a rapid closure of this case to really settle a personal score, as there's no doubting the brutality of the situation. Handing Dog Eyes over to Mrs. Chu, who proceeds to force-feed him the butchered remains of Johnny before torturing and killing him herself, as a line that goes far beyond anything that could be justified as a necessary evil of undercover police work.
Oh, what the fuck you doing, huh? Wait!
Sit down and shut the fuck up.
Jesus, I haven't been here in fucking years.
Sammy 啊，我為咗你一路開住個廚房，你睇我留埋啲骨喺裏面，你中意噶嘛？係咪啊
It's cool, Mrs. Chu. I already ate.
你同我食晒佢，食咗佢。
Wait, hey, what the fuck are you doing? I'm not fucking hungry. Oh.
Sammy， 你避下我面，我特登為你做噶，唔使驚。唔係淨係你一個人，你個朋友 Johnny 啊，老鼠仔佢都喺度喎。
What the fuck? He's crazy!
佢而家喺湯裏面，或者我將你放喺煲湯裏面。
Wait, if you have a problem with me, then let's sort it out ourselves, okay? We don't need to bring her into this.
Sorry, it's nothing personal, just business.
Oh God, I'm sorry, please, no!
While Wei was busy hunting down Johnny and Dog Eyes, the Sun On Yee was gripped by a deep sense of uncertainty. After Big Smile Lee's attempt to seize control of Water Street collapsed, Wei ended up being saved by Broken Nose Jiang. Jiang was another Red Pole, and ironically, she was the one member the HKPD knew the least about. Unlike Big Smile Lee, who was recognized as the most powerful Red Pole within the organization, the police had no idea what Jiang's real name even was, or the full extent of her business dealings. Most of what the department learned about her came directly from undercover agents, and Wei, which described how other triad members spoke of her in hushed, fearful whispers. She might not have been as wealthy or as flashy as Big Smile Lee, a man who could seemingly throw millions of dollars and countless soldiers at any problems, but Jiang was quiet, calculated, and far more dangerous in her own way. She had already foreseen Big Smile Lee's attempt to muscle into the role of chairman and force the other Red Poles to fall into line. And so Jiang aligned with Wei from the start because she fundamentally opposed how Lee conducted his business. She viewed his exploitation of women through drug addiction, pornography, and forced prostitution as a massive step backward from the Sun On Yee. She believed there were better, more sustainable ways to make money, and for Wei that was enough of a reason to trust her. The pair would go on to agree to form a unified front to keep Big Smile Lee's ambitions in check, an alliance that proved its worth much sooner than either of them expected. A few days later, a meeting was called at the hospital for all of the remaining Red Poles, and to everyone's surprise, Wei was invited to attend. Uncle Po, still recovering but back in command of the meeting, personally thanked Wei, acknowledging that he was only alive and in a condition to preside over the group because of Wei's efforts. It was also here where Uncle Po wanted to address the ongoing conflict between Li and Wei, a situation that Jiang had brought Uncle Po fully up to speed on. He would command them all to stop the infighting. As far as he's concerned, they're all not each other's enemies. They're all part of the same family. They need to be unified against their real enemies, the 18K. From his perspective, and everyone else here, they understood that the attack that put Uncle Po in the hospital and Winston in the ground wasn't issued by Dog Yaz at all, but a blatant assault by the 18K. So as far as Uncle Po and the rest of the Red Poles here were concerned, they were in a state of war against the 18K. A war that Uncle Po wasn't in a position to lead them through. And so today they had two other matters to attend to. First was officially initiating Wei to becoming a Red Pole. Uncle Po made it clear that up until this point, Wei has showed himself to be a loyal foot soldier and worthy of being fully initiated. His task of initiation was to eliminate a man who was selling to schoolgirls. Originally part of the Sun On Yee, when he was told to stop, instead of halting selling to schoolgirls, he instead switched loyalties to the 18K. So it's up to Wei to kill him. He informed Wei that if he has anyone else within his organization who hasn't been fully initiated, to bring them along. The next item on the agenda was deciding who would take over the position of chairman temporarily while Uncle Po recovered. Li immediately tried to nominate himself, but Jiang stepped in and suggested Tu Chin Sao, who was Uncle Po's blood relative, would be the best fit for the job. Her argument was that he was the best choice to keep the family together and uphold Po's wishes. And more than anything else, it was a strategic move to ensure that power didn't fall into Li's hands. Uncle Po agreed and the motion was ultimately approved. After leaving the hospital, Wei immediately called his old friend Jackie Ma. Since the beginning, Jackie's been operating on the fringes of the Sun On Yee, always trying to do his part. He had robbed some counterfeit watches from Dog Eyes and later tried to pull similar stunts with the 18K, who ended up ripping him off by giving him a motorcycle he didn't know how to ride instead of an actual payment. Wei eventually had to step in and fix the mess, which became significantly more complicated when he discovered the person he was dealing with was actually one of Officer Tang's confidential informants, Naz. Naz tried to threaten Wei by exposing him as a police officer, but Wei leveraged the fact that Naz was an informant himself. It all ended with Wei killing a group of 18K members, throwing Naz into the trunk of his car, and handing him over to Tang with the instruction to make him disappear, essentially sparing the informant's life, a rare moment of mercy given Wei's recent off-the-books behavior. Despite all of that, Wei's decision to bring Jackie along on this new mission is a genuinely heartfelt moment. Jackie's been trying to become an official Sun On Yee member his entire life, and he's absolutely ecstatic when he learns that Wei's being promoted to Red Pole alongside him. It's a testament to the real friendship they share, as there isn't a hint of resentment or jealousy from Jackie. It's pure celebration. However, that joy is cut short the moment he learns what their objective actually is. The man they've been sent to kill is from Old Prosperity, just like they were. Jackie knew him quite well. But the target himself isn't necessarily the problem. The way the entire assignment unfolds quickly becomes the major issue for Jackie.
Jackie, let's go! Jackie, let's go! Come on! Let's move!
In a moment of quick thinking, Jackie ended up shooting and killing the man they were tasked with taking out. It was a traumatic event for a low-level thief. Regardless of his history with smaller scraps and fights earlier in the game, this was completely different. On the very day of his initiation, he got a harsh, unfiltered look at what this life actually demands. In the days that followed, the killing began to haunt him. It took a toll on his sleep, drained the happiness he felt about finally being part of the fold, and even caused him to push away his romantic interests as his mental state plummeted. This is exactly where I think Jackie becomes a significantly more important element in Wei's life. He isn't just the person who introduced Wei to Winston, making the entire undercover investigation viable in the first place. He's a link to Wei's past, someone who knew him before he left for the United States 18 years ago, and is possibly the closest thing Wei has to knowing an innocent person. Jackie simply isn't built for the darker reality of killing, and that struggle sticks with him. It completely overshadows the earlier excitement of his initiation, serving as a bleak reminder of the true cost of becoming an official member of the Sun On Yee. Jackie's mental state soon becomes a source of deep concern for Wei, mirroring the growing worry he feels for his friend's safety. On the same day Wei is officially inducted as a Red Pole within the Sun On Yee, he meets with Raymond to provide an update. To Wei's surprise, Raymond mentions that he has actually been reading the reports, even admitting that he and Pendrew are surprised, happy to know just how much progress Wei has actually made. This invites a sharp jab from Wei, who sarcastically remarks that it must have been a slow day if Raymond finally found time to catch up on what Wei has been documenting. More importantly, Raymond explains that the mission objectives have shifted. Pendrew no longer wants Wei to focus on getting closer to the chairman. Instead, Raymond relays that Pendrew has designated Sunny Wo as a high priority target. It's now Wei's job to get close to Sunny and uncover whatever he can. Then there's the matter of Jackie. Jackie's name is riddled throughout Wei's reports, appearing so frequently that Raymond and Pendrew have become convinced it would be wise to bring him in. And, considering Wei's own reports on Jackie, they believe it'd be incredibly easy to turn Jackie, find as much information out on the Sun On Yee and any other triads or members he knows about. Raymond floats the idea of setting Jackie up to get arrested, a plan that Wei refuses to entertain. He argues that Jackie's arrest is completely pointless, as he's merely a low-level thug who happens to serve as Wei's cover. He insists that arresting him would only jeopardize his own position within the triads. Raymond counters this by pointing out that with Wei now serving as a Red Pole, Jackie's far outlived his usefulness to the department. While that might technically be true, Wei is clearly protecting him out of a genuine personal loyalty, so he outright rejects the order to betray his friend. Now, in the order to gather evidence on Sunny Wo, Wei mentions that to be baffling. Sunny isn't actually a member of the Sun On Yee. He merely maintains a close partnership with them and works quite tightly with Big Smile Lee, thanks to Ricky Wong, who serves as a liaison between the two. Sunny acts as a financial backer of sorts, making this assignment feel like a strange, disconnected side project that Wei doesn't fully understand. Regardless, he has his orders, though he tries to find a way to defy them. During the next meeting with Jackie, he would attempt to convince him to take a few days off, lay low, and focus on his mental health after the trauma of the recent killing. Wei's essentially trying to keep him away from the radar, knowing full well that the police are keeping a close watch on him and just waiting for him to do anything that can justify an arrest. But Jackie refuses. He's determined to move forward with the heist he has planned, aiming to lift some jewelry that the 18K have brought into Hong Kong from the United States. Jackie hopes that this lower stakes job might finally take the edge off, clearing his head so he can return to the girl he's been pursuing. He even thinks about giving her one of the stolen jewels. Unfortunately, that hope is short-lived. Just as he's trying to escape with the goods, the police swarm in and arrest him.
Don't move! You're under arrest!
Where are the others?
It's just me, boys. Just me.
Pendrew, you piece of shit.
For Wei, this is a bitter betrayal by Pendrew, and it carries the weight of a dark warning. Right before the arrest, Jackie's words had taken on an unexpectedly uplifting tone, which was a sharp contrast to the somber mood he had been in since the killing. He seemed to be finding some peace, even expressing gratitude. He acknowledged that everything happening in his life was thanks to Wei, and he was finally reaching a place where he could come to terms with the choices he'd made. He couldn't deny that Wei was his best friend and that the highs he has recently experienced were all thanks to him. But those highs have some incredible lows that he's coming to terms with, acknowledging that those are his responsibilities and his doings to accept. He just didn't realize, though, that his arrest, too, would just so happen to be because of his friend. As the story continues, Wei can't afford to focus on rescuing Jackie just yet. 18K gets word that Uncle Poe's in the hospital, and they send a wave of men to finish the job and kill the chairman for real this time. Thanks to Ricky's quick thinking, he calls Wei to the hospital where the two of them are forced to fight off wave after wave of 18K men side by side in order to keep Uncle Poe safe. It works, and that success ends up creating a new connection for Wei. From there, Ricky introduces Wei to his new target, Sunny. Right away, it becomes clear what Sunny has his hands in: porn, prostitution, drugs. Through that same network, he also establishes a connection with the rap artist known as King, who has come from the United States looking to work out a mutually beneficial deal. King wants drugs from Wo that he can bring back to the US, and in order to sell him on the full scope of what Wo and Hong Kong can offer, Sunny flexes his Sun On Yee connections by having Wei personally escort King around. It's a really smart way to introduce Sunny because it shows how his business is wrapped up in a legitimate looking front through Three Circles Entertainment, while still tying him directly to film, music, celebrities, and the criminal side of the Sun On Yee. He uses all of that to expand into other business ventures like King's potential deal in the United States, and he also uses it to control the women around him behind the scenes. Any girl King wants, Sunny claims, he can make it happen. Between the Sun On Yee and the porn and drug empire he runs with Big Smile Lee, Sunny's basically untouchable, and that same system is what keeps his women in line too, especially Vivian Liu. Publicly, Vivian is a singer and actress, a real celebrity within Hong Kong, but in reality she's being exploited by Sunny, who regularly sends her out to sleep with clients. As far as the public is concerned, King's arrival within Hong Kong, which everyone knows, is supposed to be about producing Vivian's latest song. But Wei eventually discovers that Vivian and Ricky are in love, and Vivian is a favorite tool of Sunny, constantly exploiting her by having her sleep with various people, ends up putting a serious strain on Ricky and Sunny's relationship. That strain is easy to see even during Wei's second meeting with Sunny. He shows no respect for Vivian, or for the other women under his control, and he even uses that to mock Ricky. He jokes that she's just famous pussy, that she has a job to do, and that it would be outrageous for a man like Ricky of his caliber to fall in love with someone like her. Shen's work for Sunny puts him directly in the middle of a growing strain between Sunny and Ricky, as Sunny would go on to send Wei to pick up Vivian and take her shopping, a seemingly innocent enough job. Sunny would then joke about it being a date when Wei returns.
Wei! How'd the date with Vivian go? You wanna be her new boyfriend? Relax, Ricky. I'm just making a joke.
Now that's not just idle talk, it plants a seed of doubt within Ricky's mind, making him wonder if there's actually something going on between Wei and Vivian, and the tension only grows from there. Though the immediate threat is what happens when Ricky leaves, heading out to take Vivian to the release party for the song King just produced. With Ricky out of the way, Sunny drops his guard and shares far too much with Wei about how he and Lee run an incredibly lucrative porn business together. As Sunny explains, Lee handles the talent scouting. He basically procures all of the women, while Sunny manages production and distribution. And then from there, Sunny says it pretty boldly, that if Vivian ever pushes back or pisses him off, that's exactly where she's going to end up. Straight into his films, where he plans to destroy her reputation and her body. For now, however, she's safe because she's too valuable as a celebrity to get rid of, and that value is increasingly making Sunny afraid that she and Ricky might try to leave or back out of their arrangement. In order to protect his interests, he orders Wei to set up hidden cameras throughout her apartment, something Wei agrees to, and on his way there, he receives a follow-up text from Sunny. After further thought, Sunny's decided he doesn't just want cameras up, he wants her entire apartment bugged and her computer hacked. The goal is to gather enough compromising information to keep her under constant surveillance, and use any sexual encounters captured on tape to blackmail her into total submission. And Wei is ordered to do so, without the knowledge of Ricky or Vivian. The tapes Wei collects, in addition to Sunny's own admissions about his partnership with Big Smile Lee, provide exactly the kind of evidence Pendrew has been hunting for. When Shen meets with Pendrew, later that night, both men come to the table with powerful bargaining chips. Pendrew wants that surveillance material because it's more than enough to take Sunny down for good. Meanwhile, Wei's still seething over Jackie's arrest, and he sees an opening. Putting his personal feelings aside, even though he originally protested against handing over these tapes to Pendrew as it violated Vivian's privacy, a woman who wasn't a part of any of this dirty business, Wei relents. He agrees to bring Pendrew a copy of the tapes in exchange for Jackie's release from police custody. While that transaction is the centerpiece of the scene, it's worth pointing out just how personal the conflict between the two men really is, and how manipulative Pendrew acts throughout the entire negotiation. Originally, Wei had questioned why Sunny, who wasn't even a member of the Sun On Yee, was a high priority target for Pendrew in the first place. When Pendrew learns about the potential for concrete evidence, he makes it clear that this is exactly what he's been waiting for. It's only when Wei pushes back that Pendrew twists the narrative just a little bit. He frames this all as a big win. As he says, the arrest of Sunny Wo would be a massive blow to Big Smile Lee, an ultimate win for the both of them.
Wei, forget about Jackie a moment. Whatever we can get to stick to Sunny Wo will obviously hurt Big Smile Lee. And we both want that.
Beyond Wei's personal struggle with the Sun On Yee's internal power shifts, the strike against Big Smile Lee feels like a deeply personal reckoning. Dog Eyes had already admitted that his exploitation of Wei's sister was essentially work done on Lee's behalf. Sunny's later confessions only confirm that Lee is the mastermind behind a predatory system. He He procures women, gets them hooked on cheap drugs, funnels them into pornography, and as their perceived value drops, he forces them into pure prostitution. Lee represents the exact architect of the hell Wei's sister endured until her death. In the broader political landscape, the situation within the triad is reaching a breaking point. Tu Chin Sao is currently holding the role of temporary chairman, but rumors are swirling that he intends to make it permanent. Wei and Broken Nose Jiang have already discussed the certainty that Lee would never allow this. The pair expect Lee to kill Sao and seize the Sun On Yee for himself. And so by leveraging Sao's superstition against them, Jiang and Wei tried to scare him into stepping down on his own volition. Following this voluntary step down by Tu Chin Sao, an election within the Sun On Yee would have to take place on who the next chairman would be, giving Jiang a real possibility of bypassing Big Smile Lee and becoming chairman herself, a necessity that became all the more urgent when Uncle Po, despite positive signs of recovery, suddenly died. Po's death was brand new and was actually being kept secret from the wider organization while the Red Poles prepared for the funeral, making the timing of these moves all the more critical. The arrest of Sunny Wo now functions as a strategic maneuver to corner Big Smile Lee. By taking out his business partner, the man who manages the illicit logistics of his porn and drug trade, Lee's weakened right as the power vacuum widens. With the election process underway, removing Sunny makes it significantly harder for Lee to consolidate that influence that he needs to claim the chairman's seat. Wei ultimately agrees to the deal with Pendrew, handing over the USB drive containing the invasive recordings of Vivian and her ties to Ricky and Sunny. For Pendrew, this is the finish line. He congratulates Wei, effectively declaring the mission is over. Since Jackie is now in the process of being free, the evidence is strong enough to put Sunny away for a lifetime, and in a final chilling twist, Pendrew lets it slip that he actually already knows Uncle Po's dead.
This should be all I need to put Sunny Wo away for a long time. And with Uncle Po dead...
Wait, how'd you hear about that?
Good news travels fast. I'll have Raymond arrange your debriefing. Congratulations, Wei.
What are you saying?
I'm saying it's over. You've done your job. It's time to come in.
It's not over. Not yet.
Wei, the Sun On Yee is seriously crippled. Your mission was an unbelievable success. I must admit, I thought you'd be happy.
Big Smiley will take over. It'll be even worse than it was under Poe. I can't come in now. I'm not finished yet.
I understand your personal reasons for doing this, your history with the Sun On Yee. This is why I selected you. But you've done more than enough. Those are my orders.
Fuck your orders, and fuck you too, Pendrew. I came on to take down the Sun On Yee, not to shuffle the deck.
Shen, you're making a mistake.
Much like Raymond before him, Pendrew completely brushes off Wei's warnings that the Sun On Yee is about to spiral into something far worse under Big Smile Lee. Wei knows that with Uncle Po gone, there's absolutely nothing left to stop Lee from launching an aggressive, bloody takeover. The chairman was the only thing keeping Lee from fully turning on the other Red Poles, and now that that shield is gone, Lee has no reason to hold back. Wei has every reason to be concerned. He was brought in to dismantle the organization, but now the Sun On Yee is in the middle of a self-destructive death spiral that has nothing to do with police interference and everything to do with Lee's own ambition. Pendrew's answer is a blunt threat. If Wei continues to operate within the triad, he's effectively going rogue. His official orders are to report to Raymond for a debriefing on a mission that everyone in the department is already calling an overwhelming success. Wei doesn't listen. Instead, he heads straight to the precinct to pick up Jackie so they can pay the respects to the chairman. During the drive, the situation comes full circle. Jackie reveals that while he was in police custody, he was brought in by Officer Tang, who tried to turn him into a snitch. Her tactics were a carbon copy of how she first approached Wei, using that same patronizing act of sympathy and claiming she wanted to turn his life around. Jackie told her to kick rocks, but he does admit that the time he spent behind bars was actually dedicated to thinking. He realizes that no one knows for sure who killed Uncle Po, but the 18K are the prime suspects. If that gets confirmed, it means an all-out war. Jackie admits that there was a time he thought the prospect of a gang war sounded cool, but between the trauma of the killing and his time in custody, he's finally snapped out of it. He knows he isn't cut out for this life anymore. He sees clearly now that the dream of being a Sun On Yee was nothing but bullshit. There's no future here, and for the first time he actually wants out, properly considering going into business with Ju Mei, the woman he's been courting since the beginning of the game. As is often the case in life though, realizations such as this come too little, too late.
You got a lot of nerve after that shit Pendrew pulled at the funeral. What, he sent you to finish the job?
Pendrew doesn't know I'm here, alright? I'm completely violating protocol. Look, I never wanted you for this job, but you crossed Pendrew. He's cutting you off. This is your last chance to come in clean.
What? But what's he gonna do? Arrest me? Call me a rogue cop?
Rather than continuing to recount every beat to the final sequence, which can feel disjointed and confusing given how rapidly the narrative shifts, it's better to look at the situation as it actually unfolds. Wei attends Uncle Po's funeral accompanied by Jackie, an event where the entire leadership of the Sun On Yee, every single Red Pole, is in attendance. The tension is already palpable when the 18K triads and the police converge on the site as well. In a move that feels calculated to disrupt the proceedings, the police, spearheaded by Pendrew, move in to arrest Sunny Wo directly in front of everyone. Wei, witnessing this, immediately shouts at Pendrew, demanding he show some respect for the funeral and yelling that the police have no respect. While this outburst serves as a way for Wei to distance himself from the police in front of the other Red Poles, it is difficult to justify it in a professional sense, because Wei has not been seriously suspected of being an undercover officer since he became a Red Pole, and this explosion of temper only further muddies the waters regarding his true intentions. Pendrew's response is just as dirty as the tactic itself. He leaves with the police force effectively abandoning the funeral and leaving the Sun On Yee's leaders, including Wei, to face a full-scale assault by the 18K. As Pendrew departs, he makes his loyalties and his indifference clear with his final words, "Anyone who chooses to stay at the funeral deserves exactly what they get," pretty much leaving Wei to die. Now the gunfight that follows is a brutal clash between the 18K and the Sun On Yee, but the real conflict begins immediately afterward. Big Smile Lee demands to be named chairman, believing his strength and fearsome reputation make him the only logical choice during this time of war. Instead of handing him the position, Jiang and Shen block his path by insisting the Sun On Yee tradition of a formal election be upheld. A vote needs to be cast, and Lee doesn't take that lightly. Over the next few days, he sends all of his men to attack Shen and the Water Street gang. He targets Mrs. Chu's restaurant and hits all of Wei's men, hoping to provoke him into backing down and casting his vote for Lee instead of Jiang. Wei successfully repulses these waves of men with the help of Conroy and the rest of his crew. He then heads straight to Ricky to convince him to end his support for Lee. Ricky initially refuses, reminding Conroy, Vivian, and Wei that he is loyal to his friend Sunny, who in turn backs Lee. He's committed to his friends and he takes a sharp jab at Wei, accusing him of sleeping with Vivian. It's a painful moment that isn't true. The story of Wei sleeping with Vivian was all a lie. One, Vivian and Wei had no problem telling Sunny in order to spare her life. Wei reminds Ricky that Sunny backs Lee, a man who has no problem killing Vivian. She's revealed that the police have contacted her, wanting her to testify against Sunny. If she does, she's a dead woman. But if she refuses, the tapes Wei gave to Pendrew will be made public, which would put everyone in trouble. And so Wei lays it out for Ricky. If he keeps backing Sunny, Lee will most likely force Ricky to kill Vivian himself. Alternatively, Ricky can leave Hong Kong with her, keep her safe, and let Sunny rot in jail. As for Lee, Wei tells him that's his problem to handle, and so Ricky agrees to the deal, shocked and impressed that Wei's the only person who ever refused to sleep with Vivian. With Ricky and Vivian gone, that victory is short-lived because there is still the problem of Jackie. Jackie was last seen at the funeral and has been completely absent from the assault on Mrs. Chu's restaurant and the continuous raids by Big Smile Lee. In the middle of all of this, Raymond decides to meet with Wei to share that Pendrew's cut him off and now considers him a rogue cop. Raymond offers Wei his final chance to walk into police custody as a clean officer, admitting he knows Wei's a good man, and because of that, he's offering him one final chance to walk in with him. Just then, Wei receives a call from Jackie.
Wei, just come back with me now. You're a good man. We can fix this. Smooth it over with Pendrew.
Jackie, not now. I'm busy.
Mr. Shen, we have your friend, so listen very carefully. You'll receive our instructions. Follow them if you want him to live.
Look, it's Jackie. I need to go.
Wait!
This moment is significant because Raymond finally admits he was wrong about Wei and is willing to take a personal risk that before he never even considered, moving completely away from his by-the-book approach. However, the call Wei receives is ultimately a setup. He's ordered to come to the docks unarmed and alone, which is Big Smile Lee's attempt to kill him. When that fails, Wei secures a phone from one of his attackers and tracks the man behind the job by tricking him into talking just long enough for him to trace the call, just as he did with Johnny Ratface. When he reaches the next location, he's met with more armed men who finally reveal that Jackie isn't anywhere near them. He's off the coast on an island, trapped inside of a wooden coffin, and time's running out. The wooden coffin is a chilling callback to how Officer Charles Ho was left to die after the Sun On Yee discovered he was a police officer. It really serves as a strong warning for Wei that he might have noticed if he had paid closer attention to the HKPD's files on Ho's homicide investigation, though it's hard to blame him for missing the sign when his main concern was Jackie's safety. After witnessing the shootout at the funeral, Jackie explains that Lee's men grabbed him and handed him over to the 18K, and now after being trapped in that wooden box, he's done with everything. He's no longer disillusioned with becoming Sun On Yee. He simply wants no part of any of it anymore. Even after nearly dying in that coffin, he doesn't even want to get back at Big Smile Lee like Wei suggests, as there is a line where he does try to leverage Jackie's own feelings and the things that he's been put through as a means to rile him up, to convince him to head to the election and cast his vote to make sure Big Smile Lee doesn't ascend to the throne of chairman. But you can hear it in Jackie's voice. He just is checked out. He's done with everything. He doesn't want any part of any of this, not even heading to the election. He's no longer disillusioned with being Sun On Yee. He just wants to leave, a move that's Wei understandably encourages. That leads us to the final devastating turn in the story. It seems as if Jackie is getting out of the life, only for Wei to receive a final text from him not long after, asking to meet him.
Jackie! Jackie? The fuck? Oh, fuck! Oh my god! Jackie! Ah! Fuck! Jackie! Motherfucker!
Winston and Peggy's deaths were undoubtedly massive blows to Wei, but Jackie's fate is very different. The emotional outburst that seemed absent during his revenge against Dog Eyes explodes here when he finds Jackie's disemboweled body, left as a message for him to find. This is his punishment for being the friend of a cop. As in the following scene, Wei finds himself bloodied, shirtless, and strapped into a chair, being prepared for torture by Big Smile Lee's right-hand man, who simply goes by Mr. Tong. As Tong reveals, he was the same man who tortured Officer Charles Ho and left him to die. He gloats that Ho lasted almost 48 hours under his blade, but claims that's nothing compared to what they did to Jackie. Tong makes sure to emphasize that Jackie was loyal to Wei until the very end, noting that while Jackie never suspected Wei was a cop, he nonetheless paid the ultimate price for his friendship, a final brutal jab at the bond they shared. The brutality of this scene and Wei's eventual killing of Mr. Tong speaks volumes about just how dangerous Wei Shen actually is. After being subjected to a harrowing torture session, cut multiple times by a scalpel, having a drill driven into his knee and his other knee shattered by a hammer, Wei somehow manages to break free. From there, he performs a display of raw, focused violence. He strangles a man with a cord, drowns another within his own urine, and tears through countless numbers of Big Smile Lee's men, and finally beats Mr. Tong to death with his bare hands. He lets every ounce of the rage he felt over Jackie's death take full control. In a chilling moment of finality, he even whispers an apology to Jackie once Mr. Tong is dead.
I'm sorry, Jackie.
This is the closest Wei ever comes to being truly broken by the trauma he's witnessed. As he drives towards Big Smile Lee's final compound, the silence is filled with the echoing voices of the people he has lost. Jackie, Winston, Raymond, and so many others. Every interaction throughout the story regarding his undercover work and every failed attempt he's made to keep the people he cared about safe, all converged into the singular drive for revenge. When he storms Big Smile Lee's headquarters, setting aside the election and the politics of the Sun On Yee to pursue a purely personal vendetta, he carves through Lee's men and settles lingering scores, including the death of Ponytail, the envoy Lee sent to threaten him after Winston's murder. Lee would attempt to escape by boat, leading to a high-speed chase where Wei manages to jump onto the back of the vessel in an attempt to kill him. Lee intentionally drives the boat into a gas station, triggering a massive, hellish explosion. Miraculously, the blast doesn't kill Wei. Despite being severely injured from Mr. Tong's torture and the explosion, Wei swims back to shore for one final showdown. It's here, while holding Shen at gunpoint, Lee reveals everything. Dog Eyes botched the original plan because Wei was always meant to die alongside Winston. Lee also taunts him about Mr. Tong's failure, revealing that Wei's cover was blown because he was snitched on by Pendrew. It reveals a pattern of slowly trying to kill Wei at the same time, where and how it was suddenly revealed to everyone that he was in fact a cop.
You're done! Piece of fucking shit. Fuck! How does it feel, pig? To know that your boss sold you out? Pendle fucked your way almost as bad as you fucked Jackie. You were supposed to die with Winston. Dog Eyes blew that. And that poke guy Tong. Fucking worthless Lan. But that's okay. Because I am gonna enjoy killing you myself.
Pendra's betrayal, in essence, led to the death of Jackie, would lead to the disgrace of Broken Nose Jiang for her association with the cop, and now the final satisfaction of Lee killing Wei himself. Of course, it doesn't turn out to be so simple, though. Despite his extreme injuries, Wei manages to get the best of Lee in their final fight. He disposes of the man who ruined so many lives in the only way he sees fit, by feeding Big Smile Lee into an ice chipper, ensuring that the mastermind of so much suffering is erased for good. The ending is brutal, yet highly effective. Despite the heavy personal toll Wei suffers with the deaths of Jackie, Winston, and Peggy, people who served as his only real connection to the Sun On Yee and to the version of himself he was before leaving for the United States all those years ago, the game concludes on a note that's much more powerful than it might first appear. Raymond eventually shares with Wei that Pendra's arrest of Sunny Wo has worked as a springboard to promote him even higher within the department. Even if Wei tried to convince the authorities of Pendra's betrayal or highlight how corrupt he truly is, it would never work because Pendra's effectively above all of them now. No one is going to listen, let alone believe the word of an undercover officer whose covers have been blown. That changes, however, when Shen receives a gift from his Aunt Jiang, otherwise known as Broken Nose Jiang. Jiang had managed to obtain a copy of the hospital surveillance footage, and it reveals that the death of Uncle Po was not the doing of the 18K triads, nor was it a natural submission to his wounds. It was an intentional killing by Pendrew. According to the footage, Pendrew wanted to ascend higher within the department, and to do so, he had to wipe out his own dirty connections. Pendrew had worked closely with Uncle Po in the past. In fact, Pendrew had stacked multiple high-profile arrests of Uncle Po's rivals, which cleared the board and set his career in motion. Those arrests also allowed Uncle Po to ascend to the height of chairman within the Sun On Yee almost overnight. If Pendrew wanted to climb any higher now, he needed a pristine reputation, and Uncle Po was an obstacle in his way. Sunny Wo served as the next high-profile arrest to benefit Pendrew's promotion. It becomes clear that Pendrew's desire to take out the Sun On Yee was never the work of a cop willing to bend the rules to secure a justified arrest, but rather that of an aggressively ambitious, dirty cop who simply wanted to rise through the ranks. He used his own past ties to the Sun On Yee to catapult himself further, again and again. Jiang helps serve Pendrew to Wei on a silver platter, aiding him in taking down the man who orchestrated everything, yet she also chooses to completely leave Wei alone. Following the death of Lee and the discovery that Wei was a cop, she could have easily gone after him. She even kept an eye on him after the dust settled on everything, but despite Wei being a cop that infiltrated their organization, he did help her become the new chairman, and because of that, there's a quiet agreement between the two of them. She doesn't go after him as long as he stays out of her organization from that point forward. At least that's how the game presents their final resolution. As far as Pendrew goes, Wei arranges a final confrontation. He reveals the surveillance footage he now possesses, calmly explains he has personally ensured everyone knows exactly what Pendrew did to Uncle Po. And with that truth exposed, everyone Pendrew is arrested, as well as those who had a grudge against him, will be waiting for him with open arms once he enters prison, likely preparing a swift and brutal death as retribution for the chairman's murder. Justice is finally served. But as Wei observes, Hong Kong feels like home now, and after everything he has done and witnessed, he can't help but feel a bit restless. He's left not knowing what to do next or where to go, which raises the haunting question of how much of his work was truly police business. It highlights the lengths a person must go through to gather evidence and keep a cover from being blown, making you wonder if the chameleon blended so well into his environment that even Wei couldn't tell the difference between professional duty and his own personal affairs. Whatever the case, Officer Wei Shen certainly did not walk away unaffected by this case, nor did the Sun On Yee get officially dismantled as the department had originally hoped it would.